Spiritual Leadership of the Kingdom of Maharlika 777 Morning Star. Spiritual leadership is a blending of natural and spiritual qualities utilized for influencing God's people to accomplish God's purposes. Even the natural qualities are not self-produced but God-given and therefore reach their highest effectiveness when employed in the service of God and His glory. Psalm chapter 78 verse 72. With upright heart He shepherded them and guided them with His skillful hand. Like Moses, he learned how to shepherd with literal sheep. King David, who would be the shepherd of his people. And Jesus, the good shepherd, who would guide his people perfectly. The king is ideally a shepherd of his people, caring for them, protecting them, and leading them in faithfulness to the covenant. Hello everyone, the good news is herein, currently spreading. The Kingdom of Maharlika 777 Morning Star Foundation Incorporated share with you an impact knowledge to all of us on how to implement ourselves and understand spiritual leadership. All of us can be a leader and all of us can be a spiritual leaders to be a good role model to our co-human beings. So, the Kingdom of Maharlika 777 Morning Star is sincerely hearted to invite you to listen and join us in spreading the good news about spiritual leadership. Morning Star Foundation Kingdom of Maharlika presents.
Insight on leadership from Peter. To the elders among you, I appeal as a fellow elder, a witness on Christ's suffering and one who will also share in the glory to be revealed. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, serving as servants, not because you must, but because you are willing. As God wants you to be, not greedy for money, but eager to serve, nor lording it over those entrusted to you, but being an example to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. Young men, in the same way, be submissive to those who are older. All of you, clothe yourself with humility towards one another, because God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on Him, because He cares for you. Peter was the natural leader of the apostolic band. What Peter did, the others did. Where he went, the others went. His mistakes, which sprang from his impetuous personality, were many, but his influence and leadership were without equal. We do well to ponder the advice of Peter's mature years to spiritual leaders of every generation. See that your flock of God is properly fed and cared for. Peter urges in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 2. Such is a shepherd's primary responsibility. In these words, we can hear the resonance of Peter's never-to-be-forgotten interview with Jesus after his failure. The interview that restores him and assures him of Jesus' continuing love and care. In John chapter 21, verse 15 to 22. Likewise, these strangers in the world, in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 1, about whom Peter was writing were themselves passing through deep trials. Peter could feel for them and with them, and he wrote his letter to the elders with that in mind. Peter does not approach his readers from a height. As a virtuoso apostle, rather, he takes the position of fellow elder, coming alongside the others and bearing similar burdens. He also writes as a witness to the broken and conquered by Calvary's love. He is a leader who looks across at others but not down. A shepherd's work requires a shepherd's heart. First, Peter deals with the leader's motivation. The spiritual leader is to approach the work willingly, not by coercion. Leaders of the church in Peter's day faced challenges that would down the stoutest heart, yet Peter urges that they not faint or retreat from them. Not should leaders serve from a sense of mere duty, but because of love. The work of the pastoring and helping new believers to grow is to be done as God wants, not directed by personal preferences or desires. Peter says to the leaders, shepherd your people like God. Just as Israel is God's special allotment, the people we have to serve in the church or anywhere else are our special allotment. And our whole attitude to them must be the attitude of God. We must shepherd them like God. What a vision opens up. What idea and what a condemnation. It is our task to show people the forbearance of God, the forgiveness of God, the seeking love of God, the limitless service of God. When God calls us, we cannot refuse for the sense of inadequacy. Nobody is worthy of such trust. When Moses tried that excuse, God became angry. In Exodus chapter 4, verse 14. Let us not pass the buck of leadership because we think ourselves incapable. The spiritual leader cannot have money in his eyes when service, because do not work as one greedy for money. Peter warns in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 2. Perhaps Peter had in mind Judas, whose passion for money led to his fall. Leaders will be called upon to formulate policy, to set budgets, and decide priorities, to deal with property. None of that can be done well if personal gain looms as a background motive. That the greed Peter warns against extends beyond money to fame and prestige, which are sometimes as more insidious temptation. Whether for fame or fortune, avarice cannot coexist with leadership in the kingdom. I am not sure which of the two occupies the lower sphere. He who hungers for money, or he who thirsts for applause. A preacher may dress and smooth his message to court the public cheers, and labor in other spheres may be for prominence, for imposing print, for grateful recognition. All this unfits us for our task. It destroys perception of the needs and values of the sheep. The Christian leader must not be dictatorial, not lording it over those entrusted you. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 3. A domineering manner, an unbridled ambition, an offensive strut, a tyrant's thought-no attitude could be less fit for one who claims to be a servant of the Son of God. A leader must be worthy example for the people, but being an example to the flock. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 3. These words reminds us of Paul's advice to Timothy, but set an example for believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, and in purity. In 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12. Peter teaches that elders need the shepherd's spirit. Should elders ever forget whose flock they lead, Peter reminds them that it is God's. Jesus is the chief shepherd. We are assistants and associates working under his authority. If done as God wants, then leadership will surely include intercessory prayer. We find time to pray daily by name for every leader in this extensive diocese, tripled its membership and greatly increased in spiritual effectiveness. The leader must be clothed with humility. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5, the verb refers to a slave trying on a white apron, which gives this verse an added note of meaning. Was Peter recalling the sad night when he refused to take the towel and wash his master's feet? Would pride keep other leaders from joyful service? Pride ever lurks at the heels of power, but God will not encourage proud men in his service. Rather, he will oppose and obstruct them. But to the under shepherd who is humble and lowly in heart, God will add power and grace to the work. In verse 5, Peter urged leaders to act humbly in relating to others. But in verse 6, he challenges leaders to react humbly to the discipline of God. Therefore, humbly submit to God's strong hands. Peter concludes this section of teaching with a mention of heavenly reward. When the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 4. An athlete's crown would wither, even a king's crown would rust. But no such loss comes to the kingdom servant who has chosen treasure in heaven over comforts on earth. Are we alone in the leader's role? Do we work in solitude? Not at all, Peter announces. Rather, our frustrations and worries are shared with God, who offers relief and reprieve. Cast all your anxiety on Him, because He cares for you. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. The Christian leader need not fear that care of the flock of God will be too heavy a burden. By God's invitation, the leader can transfer the weight of spiritual burdens onto shoulders bigger, stronger, broader, and more durable. God cares for you. Let worries go. Your servant, Mogi in the sheep.